We're going to hear from our next speaker now. It's another playwright. Gavin mentioned earlier the route that we had working with Eva O'Connor through her winning the Fishamble New Writing Award for her play Overshadowed, and then taking part in a writing course, writing a short play that developed into a commission, and then a recent tour of Maz and Bricks. We're going to hear later on this afternoon on our panel from Sonia Kelly as well, who's another playwright, I suppose, who's worked with a number of companies, commissioning plays and developing plays to a number of schemes or whatever. And we thought that both Sonia and Eva might be able to share with us a little bit kind of what it's like on the ground working as a playwright, what the initiatives and schemes they've used, what they found useful, and how their careers have progressed so far. So I'd like to welcome Eva O'Connor now to the stage. Thank you.
Do I have to use this?
Yeah, for recording purposes, yeah, because everything's being recorded for the podcast.
Hi everyone. My name is Eva O'Connor. It's lovely to be here in front of loads of friendly faces, and thanks very much for inviting me. I've spoken at a few playwriting things recently, and it's kind of a bizarre experience because I feel like no matter how much you write, and Gavin, I have actually written 7 plays. Some of them are better than others. Some of them are buried away, and you will never find them. But yeah, I think you never really feel like, you always have imposter syndrome. So I think the best thing for me to do now is just to kind of chat to you about how I ended up here. Gavin said on the phone when we were talking about this that I should talk about what a playwright needs. Oh no, he actually emailed me saying that, and then he said, I'll call you and we can talk about it, but he never called me. So I was like, maybe I'll just stand up and be like, an incredible social life, or like really good sex that helps you think. I don't know. I'll start with dramaturgical support. And I'm not really sure exactly who's here in terms of who's industry or who's like brand new to playwriting. Someone asked me at the break, what is dramaturgy? And I was like, ooh, I hope I give a good definition of this. But it's like basically somebody who helps you with your script or develops script ideas. I think they're like often the unsung hero of the artistic process because so I started writing plays when I was about 19, and I went to university, and I just like churned out a load of plays and got all my friends into my sitting room and, you know, did it that way, and started hiring faces and putting on work that was probably terrible, but I just did it anyway. And then after about 3 years, I met a girl called Hildegard, who I now continue to work with, and she kind of served as my first ever dramaturg, and it was like just a light bulb moment, because it was like my work just improved like about 100%. And I always think it's kind of unfair that they get less credit always at the end of the day, that they're kind of backstage really honing your craft. But yeah, I think that's actually hugely important for playwrights. So for example, on my last play, Maz and Bricks, that was about the repeal referendum, kind of. Gavin was the dramaturg on it, and it was really important to me that it wasn't like just a play about like political polemics and, you know, one person shouting repeal and the other person shouting no, 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 because I think we have enough of that on the streets. So yeah, I really wanted to dig into all these other issues, like there's loads in it, like alcoholism and suicide and like masculinity in Ireland today, and why we have such a problem with angry feminists, and how women are always really encouraged to be silent. And I believe that is still the case. Like it's never cool to shout too loudly. It's never actually cool to say what you think. And I still feel that now. So I really wanted to kind of get into those issues, and Gavin really helped me with one particular point in the script, because basically the male character Bricks he's kind of against repeal in the beginning, but he comes around to it eventually, and he kind of goes on this journey. But towards the end of the play, he says to the other character Maz, he's like, oh, you know, I would hate for what happened to you to happen to my daughter. Like, that would make me sick, you know? Like, I wouldn't let that happen to her. Like, I'd die for her. Like, I'd kill for her. And Maz says, well, she doesn't need a fucking macho bodyguard. She needs some respect. And like, Gavin really helped me with that bit of the play where I couldn't quite make it work or understand exactly myself what I was trying to say. And Gavin will just talk to you, anyone who knows him, and say all these really flabbergasting, intelligent things. And you go away feeling really confused and your brain's tired. And then the next day you're like, oh, that's what he meant. And it kind of like, so it's like having like a key, you know, to help you unlock things. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but I would really encourage anyone who's writing, like, find someone who'll give you feedback, or find someone who's on the same wavelength as you, or find someone who challenges you. Like the lady before me said, find someone who's fearsome. That can sometimes be good too. Like, you know, hand it to the person who you know will say, well, this is a pile of shite. So yeah, basically get your script to a place where you can get help, and then get help. That's dramaturgy. Money. We need money. For the people who are in the room who can provide it, we need more of it. It was so amazing to hear Rosaleen speak, because I think we, as a sector, we think we're so forward thinking, we're so great, we'll wear repeal badges, but we also have like such a cushy time of it as well, because most of us can afford to do this, or most of us can afford to write a play or take time to write a play. And like, the best ideas come when you have time, when you can like let something percolate, when you're like, flip. Like, obviously deadlines are really important, but I really believe that we need like time and space to develop things, and you need money to live. Like, if you have to, like I've been able to live mostly from working in this industry and a little bit in television over the last few years, and it's just changed entirely what I feel capable of making. Because if you're like, everyone knows, if you're working 2 jobs and you're trying to write in the evening, you're just not going to really be able to write in the evening. And I don't know what the answer is in terms of the Arts Council or anyone else having funding bodies or whatever, but that's why I just think Fishamble are so great, because they really do. I sound like I'm sponsored by Fishamble, and actually lots of people do, but they're not. It's just that they're a really sound company and they really support people. And I think all those little things, like those courses that you can go to, like days, even like this, where everyone gathers, and maybe you were feeling depressed and isolated, or like you can't write before you came and then you leave feeling differently. Like, those things are so important. And I think anything that can be offered to people, for like MAs in creative writing that cost 10 grand, like, who's going to do them? And what kind of work are those kind of people going to produce afterwards? I'm sure some great work. And I went to drama school that cost way too much money. But you know, I really think like we have to look at ways of saying, how can we produce work like that people don't have to pay through the nose to go to things. Like, I even have a massive issue with the whole drama school structure, because we make these false promises to people and they pay out money, and what's at the end? Like, anyway, that's not part of my presentation. Time management I have down. I feel like if you don't have money, you need time management. You always need time management. But like, I think if you're like, okay, I have a full-time job, I'm not going to be able to quit and be a full-time playwright anytime in the foreseeable future, then just carve out some space and time. Be like, I always write on Saturdays, or I always write on Wednesday evenings, or I'm going to not go to yoga, or whatever it is, I'm going to do this instead. And I really think like plays don't write themselves, and like, it's really hard. Like, you can go to so many things, like I've read so much or gone to so many things or asked people for the answers, and you really just have to write and start writing. It sounds obvious, but I feel like it's really important to just get the words down, and even if they're terrible, you can kind of go from there. Like, when I was writing Maz and Bricks, I kind of promised it to Jim a long time before, and I was like, yeah, I'm writing this play, it should be ready by April, then like May, then June, then July, and then Jim emailed me being like, we're having an AGM, so if this play actually exists, it would be great if you could email it to me. And I was like up till midnight finishing like half the play, being like, oh, I've ruined the best opportunity of my life. And then I sent him half the play, and he actually commissioned it. Then he said he really liked the first half and he was willing to take on the other half of it. And I was just so grateful in that moment that I had at least written half. So I feel like anything is better than nothing. That's another point. Okay. I think Gavin talked about the spiral and like looking down at yourself, and I think some people talked about like continuity of support and like investing in people, and I think that's so important. Like, I feel like we really need to think about like our careers or our journeys as like an up and down thing, but heading somewhere. And I feel like so many artists, especially like of my generation, like we're under pressure with money, or we're under pressure with, you know, we're in this kind of volatile industry, and obviously we're all theatre people here in the room, but there's so many people outside who have said, I can't do this, it's too unstable a career for me, like I have to bow out because I have mental health issues and I can't live with this, you know. And I think continuity of support is so important, like saying like, you're not just a one-hit wonder, like we'll read your scripts afterwards and we'll support you over a longer period of time, or like, yeah, you can't tie everything neatly up in a bow over a year, a project might take longer than that. So I think both as artists and people working in the industry, like I think like it's kind of like in some ways cutting yourself some slack, be like, okay, like I had a bad few months, but I know that I've got this thing coming up, or I know that I can ring up Gavin or Jim and I can say, okay, I've been silent for a while, but can I chat to you again? So, I mean, I suppose that applies to industry people and people working in the industry, but it's just about having that culture of, I suppose, supporting each other, like in any way that we can. Even supporting each other as artists. Like I know, like I'm looking around and I see like loads of people in kind of at my level who could just as easily be kind of talking here. And I think I've had so much good support from them, and I think it's really important that we just kind of, that we encourage each other, like not only through schemes but also in our lives. That's another point. Yeah, my next note is kindness and good vibes. I think Rosaline said that so well as well, that like we just, like that's a really amazing thing about working with Fishamble. Like we've had a really weird year, I think, in terms of everything that has come out with Weinstein and Me Too, and you know, Waking the Feminist before that. And it's really interesting because I guess I talk about it a lot, and lots of people perceive me rightly as a feminist and kind of challenge me on things. And there definitely is a backlash. I think like a lot of men, for whatever reason, and are uncomfortable on some level with what has happened. And I'm not pointing fingers at all, because I do think that kind of overnight, loads of young men were just automatically in the wrong, like without us ever educating them as to why, but suddenly saying, you're gonna lose your job now because your WhatsApp messages are filthy. Like, you know, so I think we're at this really weird period of time where things feel like they're shifting, and they're shifting really fast, and there is a big divide between us. So I think we have to really keep pushing forward. Like the statistics show, like we still don't, I think there's a lot of people who are like, yeah, okay, ladies, you've had your moment. Like, or someone said to me recently, oh yeah, a woman won that award. Guess why she won it? I said, why? Because she's a woman. He was like, they had to give it to a woman. You know, I hear that a lot. Like, a woman didn't win something rightfully, or I wasn't commissioned rightfully, or whatever it was. And I think we have to keep pushing forward, but we also have to come together. You know, we have to kind of build some kind of bridge where we're all in the same boat, all the weird metaphors. And I think like a huge amount of that comes back to kindness. And Fishamble, and especially Jim, they're leading like a kindness revolution. And it shows that you don't have to be horrible, you don't have to be abusive, you don't have to be power hungry. Actually, like, you know, success breeds success, and kindness breeds kindness. And like, it's so difficult as well in this industry. If you're like, look, if you're on Facebook and Instagram and everything, like you're constantly comparing yourself. Everyone in the industry is constantly saying, what have they got going on? Where are they bringing their stuff? And I think it's so important to realize that we can all like champion each other. And so like we need more companies like Fishamble, or more schemes that are just opening doors and saying everyone's welcome. As a playwright, I think a huge thing is to like pretend that you're a really ignorant 19-year-old. When I started off first, I just like I said, I just didn't take no for an answer. I'm embarrassed when I think back on the people I rang up to basically say, I'm class, let me put a play on here. Like looking back, they must have just been like, lol, and put the phone down. But I think there's like, it's hugely important to just like, to be like, okay, like I remember being at a course once, and someone was like, you know, if you want to make a play set in a field full of lilies, like just insist upon it. And if they try and downsize your stage, just say, no, I'm going to take this play elsewhere until they give me a field of lilies. And I feel like that was a really good piece of advice, because so much we write for people who we think would like our play or would like to commission us, or like, oh, I better put less actors in this play because it's more, you know, and of course you have to deal with practical constraints, but I think we really have to encourage people to like dream big and like write the things they want to write. Like I think like the reason that Fishamble is such an interesting company is because they tell stories. They're not really obsessed with gender quotas or representation or visibility. They want to tell stories, and that's so important. So I think like as a playwright, like find out what's most like burning inside you. Like mostly they're the plays that will be good. Like the things that you've been like laboring over for ages because you think they're topical, they probably won't be that good, or someone else will write it before you do, or you know. So I feel like everyone has a story in them that's specific to them, and it might sound obvious, but I really think we need to yeah, like creatively brainstorming, imagining you've loads and loads of money. Like hopefully the money will eventually come to you. I have a small section here about like theatre and activism. I feel like, so when I was in university in Edinburgh, I fell in with a group of kind of mad, radical Scottish lefties who were dying to divorce from England. And it was really interesting because they were really fascinating thinkers, but I never felt like I fully fitted in with them. Like I never felt like on Palestine demos or on whatever it was, I never quite felt like I deserved to be there. But I feel like I have found my place in like politics or activism or whatever is through theatre. And I think we can really change hearts and minds through theatre. Like I really do believe that. And like I've kind of written about things that were often quite issue-based. Like I have a play about anorexia that overshadowed, that won the Fishamble Award, and that's the thing that became a short series on BBC. And through that, I've ended up working with like an eating disorder charity called Beat in the UK, and just like speaking to those people who are affected by having eating disorders, which is a lot, and obviously campaigning for repeal. And I think there's such a strong place for theatre in society in terms of getting to people in a way that politics just can't. Like even now, like the debate is so exhausting. We are all so exhausted by, I won't even say the R word, but we were touring Maz and Bricks, which was about that, and I was really worried that people would just be like, I don't want to go to this, I'm sick of watching the debates on TV, I don't want to hear the word abortion ever again. But people were the opposite. They came, and we had post-show discussions, and people brought their grannies, and then people would put up their hands and say, I'm actually a no voter, but your play really made me think. And I think, I just think we can't, it's so easy to think, especially in, like Rosaline was saying, like in the world of Netflix or TV, or like we all want like instant things to consume. And I think we just need to remember as well, like that feeling that you get when you're front row in a play, and you're like, you come out and you're just like, you're hit by a bus, like almost like that moment we were talking about when Ruth and Gavin were discussing, like that moment where when you see a dancer move, it's like that inexplicable moment, like that you can't really put words on. And I think theatre has that in terms of changing people's hearts, so we shouldn't forget that. Someone just waved me for time. I think that's everything.